All right, y'all. We give praise, esteem, and honor to the living Alahym in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach this day. We're going to pick this up in John chapter 5, verse 39. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and there they will testify of me. And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you, that you have not the love of Alahym in you. I come in my Abba's name, you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe but receive honor one from another and not the honor that comes from Alahym only? Do not think that I will accuse you. To Allah, there's one that accused you, even Moses, in whom you trust. Had you believed Moses, you would have believed me, for he wrote of me. But if you believe not his writings, how should you believe my words? All praises be to Abba and Shamahim in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Let's pick this up at this is what I'm gonna do. Get the lights up for me, please. Matthew 5 and 17. Revelation chapter 2. And then Genesis chapter 5. Because everything is rooted from starting in Matthew 5 and 17, and this is expanded out from there. Same conversation, just a different focal point verse. The focal point verse now is Genesis chapter 5 and 1, by the way. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I come not to destroy, but to fulfill. For truly I say unto you, till Shamahim and Arats pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law to all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of the least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the Malkuth for Shamahim. Whosoever shall do and teach, the same shall be called great in the Malkuth of Shamahim. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the Malkuth of Shamahim. So, of course, as you know, we were looking at 5 and 7, verses 17 and 18. Of course, 17 is dealing with in regards that Mashiach was coming to fulfill the book. 18 dealing with that when heaven and earth pass, you'll have right to the tree of life, because there will be no need for teaching the law to any and every one, because you'll be in the reign and dominion of his Father, and there will be no sinners present. Revelation chapter 2, verse 7. He that have an ear, let him hear what the Ruach say unto the synagogues. To him that get victory will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of Alahym. So when you're dealing with being able to have right to the tree of life, well, you have to overcome. When you overcome, you have the ability to defeat sin, and therefore you would not be lawless. You know what I'm talking about? Or also, you would not be under the penalty of the law, which is death, because there is no mercy or life contained in the law. No matter how much individuals want to fight, scream, and kick about it, it doesn't change the facts. And with that being said, now you have access to eat from the tree of life and live forever, because faith was shut up unto you, as we have went over in the preceding weeks. Now, Genesis chapter 5, because we're dealing with being in the image of Alahym. We started that off when reading Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26. And we were talking about that tree last week. As forth as that fruit is of itself and things of that sort. But now we're going to deal with being in the image of Alahym. And again, we will reiterate the fact that there is no plural in Genesis chapter 1. So we don't have to be running around here with people debating and arguing, talking about the Father and the Son were creating in the beginning. So when you see that the text says that Mashiach created all things, you can see that plainly, because that is not plural. Also, it will allow us to get also even more insight on something that we've already been discussing, of how Adam is declared to be the son of Alahym, which means that if Mashiach made all things, that he would be Alahym. You know what I'm talking about? With another point pointing in that matter. You know what I'm talking about? So I know we got the Clubhouse app going, but see, you know, individuals don't jump in here because I ain't with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just not with it. I mean, even with the YouTube thing, I ain't with going back and forth with dudes. You know what I'm saying? We're only here for one reason and one reason alone. And that's to put this work on the street. They could take and do what they want to with it after they get it. You know what I'm talking about? Just some different work on the street. That's a little different from the trash that gets sold out here every day and every night. You know what I'm talking about? Some people feel like their work is nice. Some people feel like our work is trash. But at the end of the day, it's all Yahuwah's word, and Yahuwah get esteemed. So praise be to Yahuwah. That's all that can be said. You know what I'm talking about? Genesis chapter 5, verse 1. This, the book of the generations of Adam, and the day that Alahym created man. In the likeness of Alahym made he him. See, this also will accentuate the point that we were discussing in Genesis chapter 6 about the sons of Alahym not being angels. Again, if you are a son of, let me just do this. Let me just establish this one right here, right? Let's just establish real quickly before we go any further. What does it even mean to be a son of Alahym? Let me look up, and I'm just going to read it. And I know it's redundant and it don't necessarily need to be done, but some things need to be done for clarity's sake. So I'm just swinging over here to Genesis chapter 6 and verse 2. I'm going to read the sons of Alahym real quickly. Remember, we talked about morning stars, and that, you know, that was Boca Kokav. You know what I'm saying? That means that those were sons of the day, because they were the progeny or the offspring of Mashiach. So that's what that means when you see morning stars in Job 38. That is the literal, quote unquote, Hebrew definition of said information. So of course, I know y'all know it's Ben Alahym. So when you have Ben Alahym, what do you have? You have son, grandson, child, member of a group, a son, a male child, a grandson, children, youth, young men, young of animals, sons of injustice for unrighteous men, or sons of Alahym for angels, people of a nation, lifeless things, sparks, stars, arrows, member of a guild, order, or class. You know what I'm talking about? But at the end of the day, firstborn son, go on and so forth, a steward, that there in the third. At the end of the day, it's a son. So then you have Alahym, which of course you know that is a ruler, that is a judge, that is a divine one, that is angels, gods, goddesses, godlike one, works of special possessions of Alahym, the true Alahym. So if you are a son of Alahym, you have to take something into account. And we're going to look at that and let the text bear witness to that. But the first thing I want to do with that is to come over here to John chapter 1 and verse 12. Because if we're going to talk about being in the image of Alahym, and Adam was made, hold on, let me read Luke chapter 3 since we read that. Matter of fact, let me do Genesis chapter 1. I'm just going to be as thorough as possible before we even set up talking about actually being in his image. We would have to establish you being born of him and what that even means. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. I read Genesis 5 already. So let's look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Alahym said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, over the earth, over every creeping thing that creep upon the earth. So Alahym created man in his image. In the image of Alahym created he him, male and female created he them. So let's back up so you can see this again. I hate to be redundant, but we will do so. Shalom, Brother Ellis. So again, no plural here. No plural whatsoever. Again, you have Amar, which is for those who don't know, to say, to speak, or to utter. Amar. That's what you got when you got and said. Amar. Amar Alahym Asa. So Asa again is to fashion, to accomplish, to produce, to prepare. So what do you have? Amar Alahym Asa. Alahym spoke and produced Adam. That's what you have. A word produced Adam. That is what you have. Nothing more, nothing less. A word produced Adam. When you have in our image, there is no R. It is Salim. It is strictly image. A representative figure. You understand? So you have Alahym's word produced Adam, in it, which was in his image or likeness. After our likeness is demuth, likeness, similitude. So that means he made him in the image and similitude of Alahym himself. And then, of course, he gave him dominion, which is rada, which is to have dominion, to dominate, to cast down, and to rule. See, and again, that comes into also the natural inkling, what I tell you that most young boys have in them. Yahuwah has put it in a man's nature to want to dominate and rule. It's just the society that we live in. It tempts it out of young boys early to have the requisite intangibles needed to dominate and rule his surroundings. But I want you to see that Alahym spoke a word, and it produced Adam. Before we go back to John 1, come over here to Colossians. Come over here to Colossians 1 and 15. Colossians 1 and 15, then we'll go to John chapter 1. I praise God. He say, who is the image of the invisible Alahym, the firstborn of every creature. For by him were all things created that are in Shamahim, that are in the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions, principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. Remember, it said that Alahym. Alahym does not denote whether that's the Father or the Son, if you would. This is something that I haven't said in a very, very long time. But one thing is for certain and two things is for sure. That if the Father is the king that we believe him to be, kings don't get off their throne and build nothing. And where do you have an example in the text of a king getting off of his throne and building anything? You don't. When the house of Alahym was being built during the time of Solomon, did Solomon come up off his throne and build that, or did he commission people to do so? Matter of fact, I'll take it a step further. It was in the Father's house for a house to be built, and it was commissioned to the Son to build it. He created those things, and that was David under Solomon. See, that's a little bit of nuance of that being slid onto you, the way it was given into the power of the Son to create all things and not the Father himself to do it. But see, some people will say you're spiritualizing this. You're reading this in the text. You're just a wicked, unbelieving bastard. Take it for what you will. I have no need or want or desire to convince anyone of anything. You know what I'm talking about? I do not care. The word of Alahym speaks for itself. Those who are there to receive it shall receive it, and those who are ordered to damnation will reject it and receive their full reward. So let Alahym be esteemed on either side of the ledger. But do you understand how you can see that? Can you even understand where even the Father gave judgment to the Son, just like he read in John 5 that he told you it would be done? Because the Father doesn't have to do such things. The king doesn't have to do such things. You know why we have a thought process that a king would come up off his throne? Because a lot of dudes is peons who want to be kings and who would middle themselves in menial labor. You understand? In menial labor. That is not the work of kings. Kings don't concern themselves with menial labor. I know we don't like to hear that, but that's the truth. You know what I'm saying? There's no way in the world. I seen a dude I know today, man, with just perfect segue on the natural side of things. You know what I'm saying? He owned a lot of properties, man. Man, he said straight up and down, he knew a dude. He wanted to get in real estate investing. He said the dude wasn't making no money and he wasn't successful because he kept picking up a hammer. He said the dude ended up creating his own contracting company and doing work for people, shalom, man, who do such type of things. But he was saying that if you were going to be successful as an investor, you can't come down and be handling no hammer. You can't come down and be putting up no windows. See, it sounds good and noble. I get down and get my hands dirty. But if you're going to be successful, you have to delegate that unto others that they fulfill your vision. You can't do all that work. Because if you're doing all the work, you're going to miss something. You just oversee. See, the Father oversees the Son because we already know from what we looked at from Matthew 5 and 17 and 18 and looking at how it's going to go down at the end, that the Son is going to deliver all things back to the Father whom gave it to him. The Father just overseeing the Son and commissioning and executing the vision of which he gave the Son to execute, of whom the Son gave to others to fulfill. You know what I'm talking about? But see, we don't want to look at it that way. We don't want to see it that way because we really think kings get off their throne and do that type of labor. If they did that, they wouldn't be a king. They wouldn't be a king. You know what I'm saying? Like, we like to come up with these stories of, the servant king who comes down and does this, that, there, and the third. See, don't try to conflate that with what Mashiach did on the throne. Coming down to make himself a sacrifice and rule, because you see, when he took back his rule, he went back into Alahym to participate in things that kings do and gave that charge and steward to his servants to fulfill that work, not for him to come down here and do it himself. You know what I'm talking about? He came down here to fulfill a different type of work, and that was to be a blameless sacrifice, and that you might have an opportunity to be made in his image. After that, he gave you to do the work. I don't have time to be doing that, what you're doing. I don't have time for that. I came off my throne to do something that nobody else could do. And after I did that, remember, he said, if I wouldn't have came and did the work, which no other man had did, they would have not had sin. But now that they came, they ain't got no cloak for their sin. Now that work has been accomplished. I must ascend back to my throne and do what it is that kings do. And since I'm of the priesthood of the order of Melchizedek, what I must do is labor in the midst of the sanctum to make intercession on behalf of everyone who comes under Alahym by me. I ain't got time to be doing no menial tasks and labor. I ain't got no time to be sitting around here in no synagogue teaching you, boy. I ain't got no time to be walking around in no vineyard laboring, what? If I did that, I wouldn't be the king. Do you know what I'm talking about? You got to understand that. And his father is greater than him. And you think he gonna do it? But of course, we don't have an understanding of that. You live in a quote-unquote democratic republic, which is not a democratic republic. There's no such thing as a democracy. Don't let the people lie to you. There is no such thing as a democracy. It does not exist. Your kingdom is not a democracy. It's not majority rules. It's not how that works. That's what democracy is, majority rules. This is a republic. You know what I'm talking about? This is a republic. That means individuals, quote unquote, represent the interests and desires of a group of individuals. That's why they're called a representative. See, we've talked about this many years ago. The kingdom of Alahym is a theocracy. When you're dealing with the priesthood of Melchizedek, you're dealing with a theocracy. If you don't know what a theocracy is, that is when the religious leader is the head leader of a country. You understand? Do your research and you can see at one time that Iran was a theocracy. You know what I'm talking about? But nevertheless, Colossians 1:15, one more time. If you want to call it that, allegedly Vatican City is a theocracy. But that junk wouldn't count to me because them boy booty hole lovers. Who is the image of the invisible Alahym, the firstborn of every creature? For by him were all things created that are in Alahym, that are in Arat, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. He is the head of the body, the house, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all he might have preeminence. For it pleased that in him should all fullness dwell. Now, John chapter 1, verse 12. See, a lot of people get their panties in a bunch because they thinking you taking esteem from the Father. You can't take esteem from the Father if the Father wanted his son esteem. You can't take something when that's his desire. That's his desire. The reason why you're not taking anything from the Father, because the Father only wants to deal with certain individuals. And that's the individuals that will be found worthy to enter into the kingdom of heaven. That's the only people he want to deal with. He don't care about the rest. He don't care nothing about that. Those are not the people of his concern. What does that mean? The Father only is concerned with his sons, his offspring. That's all he care about. He don't care about nothing else. Because those people are no concern to him because they're not under his stewardship. They're not under his rule. They're not under his household. See, one thing about people who deal with the word in these days and times is that you are very highly concerned with people who don't live in your house. Your father in Alahym is not concerned with people who don't live in his house. You know what I'm talking about? He's not concerned. He leaves that for the son and for those who the son sends to labor to be concerned to get people to come in the house who are not of his house. But the only people who the Father is concerned with are those who are of his household. If you're not of his household, you have no concern to him because you're not under his rule. So he's not concerned with people who are not under his rule. Matter of fact, after I read this, John chapter 1, verse 12, 2 Chronicles chapter 16 and verse 19, I believe. John chapter 1, verse 12. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of Alahym, to them that believe on his name, which were born, not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of Alahym. Now, I did mention I need to read this Luke, so let me go and get this Luke chapter 3 out of the way before we hit the 2 Chronicles while we back here. Luke chapter 3, verse 36. Remember, it said that Adam was created in the likeness and image of Alahym, in the likeness and similitude. That means Adam is in the similitude or visage of Alahym himself, which is giving us more insight, if you didn't already have it, on why Yahushua is called the second Adam, because their birth is the same. They were both made in the likeness and similitude of Alahym by a word. Praise God. That's the same way that any one of y'all going to be made into a son of Alahym. It's going to be by a word. No law, a word. You can't become a son of Alahym by the law. Can anybody tell me why you can't become a son of Alahym by the law? Matter of fact, since that's on my mind, who can answer that for me? Anybody can raise their hand and place it in the chat. Why can't you become a son of Alahym by the law? Can anyone explain? Can anyone explain why that is not possible? I'm going to read this Luke 3 and 36 while y'all thinking on that. Say, because the law wasn't made for the sons of Adam. Very well, sir. Which was of Canaan, which was of Arphaxad, which was of Shem, which was of Noah, which was of Lamech, which was of Methuselah, which was of Enoch, which was of Jared, which was of Malil, which was of Canaan, which was of Enos, which was of Seth, which was of Adam, which was of Alahym. Civic says, because the law doesn't produce life, because it's not a part of the promise. I ain't gonna lie to you. I done already told you. The law didn't have no mercy and spirit. It couldn't refresh you. See, let me tell y'all something. Y'all overthinking it. I've already told you how you can't become a son of Alahym by the law. I have already told you. Can anyone else share? Can anyone share what I have said that has answered that question? You say the law brings death, Mother Sharona? Let me show you. I didn't use the text, but I had already told you. John 1 and 1. You know how I already told you when we read Genesis 1 and 26, when it says that Alahym, Amar, Alahym, Salem, Adam. When it said that Alahym's word produced Adam. That's why, because there wasn't no law involved in making the first Adam. So that's how you know there's no law involved in making the second. Because it was a word that produced Adam. So I'm going to read you this John 1 and 1. Then I'm going to read you Hebrews 11 and 1. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not writing any answers because I can see why you can say that. But that one, sometimes don't overthink it. It's just really simple. Just really simple. All those answers are accurate. Yeah, the law does bring death, so you can't be a son of Alahym because of it. And yes, there's no mercy in the law, so you can't be a son of Alahym because of it. And like Civic said, the law doesn't produce life, so yes, you can't be a son of Alahym because of it. And the same thing, the Bella said the same. And Andrew said, because it's not a part of the promise. And the law wasn't made for sons of Alahym. And all those things are accurate. But when we just look at the text and you was to look at somebody and say, you can't become a son of God by the law. All you have to do is go back from the beginning and what it says in the language on how Adam was made. And Adam was produced by a word. By a word. Again, let me read you the Hebrew word for word one more time. We've talked about Amar many a days, but I'll share it with you one more time. And I ain't trying to be hard on you, but I want you to be able to understand. Because the reason why I want you to be able to understand, because just in case you have to make that claim to somebody that they can have something to think on. And what does it say? Amar, to say, to speak, to utter, to say, to answer, to say in one's heart, to think, to command, to promise, to intend, to be told, to be said, to be called, to boast, to act proudly, to avow, to avouch. To consider, to declare, to demand, expressly, report, acquire, say, speak. So at the end of the day, just plainly and directly, the first Adam was made strictly by word. No law involved, just the word. That's all it took. That's why I said those that believe on his name. What would you be believing on with Yahushua HaMashiach? You would be believing on a word. On a word. That's what you would be believing on. And that's what would cause you to be produced or to be made into a son of Alahym, just like Adam was, just like Yahushua was, by a word. What made Yahushua become a son of Alahym? A word. That was it. That's all you need. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the faith aspect come in it, which is accurate. And then the elements of why the law can't make you a son of Alahym is what most of you enumerated on. You know what I'm talking about? And those things are when you're adding in the nuance to go along with it. You know what I'm talking about? But the crux of the spring of what all your answers was is you become that by a word. Simply a word. That's all you need. John 1:1. Let's look at it and see what it says. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with Alahym, and the word was Alahym, and the same was in the beginning with Alahym, and all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Because when we go back and look in Genesis, what do we see? Everything that was created was made by what? A word. He spoke it, and therefore it came to pass. I believe, therefore I have spoken. That's what the book say. Come over here to Hebrews 11, man. Walk with me. If we're going to talk about being in the image of Alahym, then we have to be very thorough. We have to be very precise. You know what I'm talking about? And lazily focus on elucidating on what that means. You know what I'm saying? Let me tell y'all something, man. I told y'all this before. Give thanks to Alahym for the fact that we even get any level of understanding of any note. And when I say that, not to be comparing, shalom, Brother Shaul, not to be comparing to what other people know or don't know, because that's not the point. Always remember what he told his apostles. Blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For many people have desired to hear what you hear and have not heard, and many people have desired to see what you have seen and have not seen. And all they get is parables, and they don't get an understanding. But for reasons known unto God, he has desired for us to get an understanding. Do not take that for granted. Always sit back and look at that it's not of anything that we have done of ourselves. There's no righteous deed that any of us have done. There's no righteous word that any of us have spoken. There's no level of worship that we have given that is greater than any other. All of this is contained in the mercy and goodness of Alahym, which he has extended unto us that we might reverence, honor, and bless his mighty and Kadash name. Don't never let that be forgotten. Don't never take that for granted. And I know I tell you that all the time. Don't take this for granted. This is the mercy of God. This ain't got nothing to do with me. This ain't got nothing to do with any of us. This has strictly to do with the Alahym of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his mercy, which is being extended unto us that our souls might be saved. You know what I'm saying? Don't juxtapose it to what other people are doing and saying, well, you're lesser or we're